$220 billion. That is the number quietly reshaping every grocery store in America right now. And if your local supermarket has started to feel a little different lately, colder somehow, less familiar, like something you can't quite put your finger on is slowly disappearing, you are not imagining it. Fewer people working the floor, more cameras on the ceiling, more machines where staff used to stand. The building looks the same. The products are the same. But the actual experience of walking through one of these stores has changed in ways most people haven't fully registered yet. And here's the thing. It goes a lot deeper than a price tag. This video is going to walk you through exactly what changed, why it happened, and most importantly, what these stores are quietly doing every single time you walk through the door, because most people are only seeing the surface of this. Let's start with something pretty much everyone has felt by now. You walk into the same store you've been shopping at for years. Same aisles, same layout. You grab what you need, head to checkout, and look at the total. Higher than you expected, again. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, consumer food prices have risen more than 30% since before the pandemic. 30%. That is not a minor adjustment. That is a generational shift in what it actually costs to feed a household. But here's what's interesting. Most people aren't shocked by high prices anymore. They've adjusted. They've just quietly accepted that this is what groceries cost now. What's actually bothering people, and this is the part that doesn't get talked about enough, is something different. Something quieter. The feeling that even at these higher prices, they're getting less than they used to. Pick up a box of your regular cereal. It looks exactly the same. Same brand, same design, same spot on the shelf. Maybe the price moved up slightly, but the box is lighter than it was 2 years ago. A box that used to hold 18 ounces now holds 15. Chip bags that felt full now have noticeably more air inside. Some of the most well-known ice cream brands in the country quietly shrank their containers, from a full half-gallon down to something meaningfully smaller, and they did it without changing the packaging in any way that would make you notice at a glance. This has a name: shrinkflation. And it's not a fringe economic term anymore. It's something people are bringing up at kitchen tables because they're experiencing it directly, every week, without anyone telling them it's happening. The price went up, and the product got smaller, both, at the same time. And even that is not the whole picture. The deals are disappearing too. The buy one get one offers that shoppers built their weekly budgets around for decades are harder to find. Coupons that used to deliver real savings are worth a lot less now. And on the shelves themselves, something else has quietly shifted. Something most people haven't consciously noticed yet. There are fewer choices. Not because things sold out, because retailers are deliberately cutting the number of products they carry. The industry calls it SKU rationalization, reducing variety to focus on top sellers and make the back end of operations simpler. Walk down any aisle and it still looks well stocked. But the actual range of options has contracted. Higher prices, smaller packages, fewer deals, fewer choices. Each one on its own is a minor frustration. Together, they add up to one very specific feeling. The cart doesn't feel as full as it used to, and that feeling is real. But it's also just the surface of what's actually going on. Because the most significant changes happening inside grocery stores right now have nothing to do with prices or package sizes. They're in what the store has quietly become and what it's quietly doing. Here's a number worth stopping on for a second. More than 96% of grocery stores in the United States now have some form of self-checkout installed. 96%. If you feel like you're spending more time talking to a screen than to a person at the supermarket, that's not just a feeling. The data backs it up. This isn't a trend from one part of the country or one specific chain. It is the near universal standard across American grocery retail. But here's the thing. The machine isn't really the story. The story is what had to disappear to put it there. Think about what a grocery store actually felt like 20 years ago. Not the products, the experience of being in one. You might run into someone you knew near the produce section. The cashier might remember what you usually bought and mention it. An employee stocking shelves might catch you looking confused and help you find something before you even asked. None of those moments were big deals on their own. They lasted seconds, but they added up into something real, something that made the store feel like it was part of the neighborhood, a place, not just a facility. Walk into those same stores today. The layout is almost identical. Same number of checkout lanes, same footprint. But most of those lanes are dark. One cashier, maybe two in a row of 10 stations. The rest has been converted into self-checkout terminals. Not because the store ran out of space. Because the math changed. Labor costs went up. Technology got cheaper. The calculation that retailers had been running for decades started returning a different answer. And so gradually, then quickly, the human presence at the front of the store got reorganized out. The store runs more efficiently now. It also feels considerably less like somewhere you belong. Here's a scene that plays out dozens of times every single day in grocery stores across the country. A shopper walks up to self-checkout to save a few minutes. First couple of items scan without a problem. Then the machine flags something. An error message, a beeping sound, a message requesting employee assistance. They wait. 30 seconds, a minute, sometimes longer, and somewhere in that waiting, the irony quietly settles in. The process designed to be faster has become slower. The only real difference is that nobody's looking at you while it's happening. Now retailers didn't make this shift because they stopped caring about customers. Labor is one of the biggest costs in grocery operations. Online grocery delivery has put real pressure on margins at every price point. These are legitimate business pressures. But for the shopper standing there waiting for a machine that was supposed to save them time, the reason behind the decision doesn't really change how it feels. Something human was taken out of an experience that used to have it. And this is where the story goes somewhere most people don't expect it to. National survey data shows that roughly 1 in 3 adults in the United States experiences loneliness on a regular basis. That sounds like a mental health headline, but it connects to this directly, and in a way that's easy to overlook. For someone who lives alone, whose day goes from work to home and back again, a trip to the grocery store was often the one place in a given day where they actually spoke to another person. Not a long conversation, nothing profound, a few words at the register, a quick exchange near the deli counter, a small, ordinary moment that reminded them they existed in a shared space with other people. When those moments disappear, something disappears with them that's hard to measure but very easy to feel. The store is still open. The lights are on. Everything is available. But the sense of being somewhere that actually acknowledges you're there, that quiet, understated feeling of belonging, is becoming genuinely harder to find. That's not nostalgia for how things used to be. That's a description of something that is actually gone. Have you noticed this shift in your own grocery store? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how different it feels where you are. But the changes to how shopping feels are still only one part of what's happening here. Because there's something else going on inside these stores. Something that would have seemed genuinely strange just a few years ago. You walk into the personal care aisle. You find what you need. You reach for it. And you can't take it off the shelf. Not because it's out of stock. Because it's locked behind glass. Toothpaste, shampoo, razors, baby formula, cold medicine, products that have sat on open shelves in American stores for generations, now sitting behind locked cases, requiring a call button, a wait, and an employee with a key just to buy something that costs $4. The reason isn't complicated, but sitting with what it actually means takes a moment. The U.S. retail industry loses more than $100 billion every year to theft, fraud, and what's known as inventory shrinkage. For stores running on grocery-thin margins, and grocery margins are some of the tightest in all of retail, locking up high-theft items can genuinely be the difference between staying profitable and not. The math makes sense on paper. What it creates in practice is a different story entirely. Most shoppers standing in front of a locked case don't consciously feel accused of anything. But the friction arrives anyway. A complication that didn't used to exist. A small but real irritation layered into one of the most routine things a person does in a week. And retailers didn't see what happened next. Research has consistently shown that locked cases lead to a meaningful portion of shoppers simply walking away from the purchase. They don't wait for the key. They don't go looking for a staff member. They just put nothing in the cart and leave, to a different store, to an online order, or they just go without. The case was designed to protect revenue. In a surprising number of situations, it ends up costing it. The security measure creates the exact kind of loss it was built to prevent, just through a mechanism nobody anticipated. And that paradox is also what pushed retailers toward a different solution. Something that could do what the locks do, but without the friction, without the weight, without the key. Something invisible. More than 80% of major retailers in the United States are currently testing or actively deploying artificial intelligence for store operations, loss prevention, or inventory management. 80%. That is not a projection about where things are heading. That is happening right now, in stores that look from every angle exactly the way they always have. And that invisibility is precisely what makes this different from everything else we've talked about so far. Higher prices? You see those. Smaller packages? You feel those when you pick them up. Self-checkout terminals? You stand at those. Locked cases? You stop in front of them. AI in a grocery store has no face. It makes no sound. It doesn't introduce itself. What it actually looks like is a camera bracket mounted on a ceiling, a small sensor clipped to a shelf edge, a brief alert that flashes on a self-checkout screen and disappears in under a second. Nothing calls attention to itself. Nothing signals what's actually running behind it. So here's what is running behind it. When you pick up a product and put it back without buying it, that action may be recorded. Not to flag you personally, but because across thousands of those moments every day, a pattern builds. Which products attract attention without converting to a sale? Which shelf placements people are walking past? Which items make people hesitate? When you pause in front of a display for longer than average, that pause may be logged as a behavioral data point. When you scan something at self-checkout and the screen briefly flashes a colored alert, that's often an AI loss prevention system running a real-time check, comparing what the camera sees in the bagging area against what you just scanned, checking weight, running pattern analysis. All of it completed in the time it takes you to reach for your next item. You never see it working. Most of the time, nothing comes of it. But it's running, continuously, across every transaction in nearly every major store you walk into. The reason retailers are investing in this at such scale really comes down to one thing: the numbers. A retailer processing hundreds of millions of transactions every week doesn't need a big improvement percentage to generate extraordinary financial value. A fraction of 1% reduction in shrinkage across that volume can represent hundreds of millions of dollars a year. That makes AI one of the most significant investments in the history of retail. Not because it sounds impressive, but because at that scale, even tiny gains are worth enormous money. And it's not just loss prevention anymore. AI is now being used to monitor shelf conditions in real time, catch low stock before customers notice it's gone, predict what people will want before they show up to buy it, and direct staff attention to wherever in the store it's actually needed most. For retailers, it's a cost engine, a way to run leaner with fewer errors. For shoppers, it raises a question that's hard to ignore once you're aware of it. Does buying a bottle of shampoo or a box of crackers really need this level of infrastructure running around it? Most shoppers aren't asking that yet, because the system doing it was specifically designed not to be noticed. People spend a lot of time thinking about AI as something that's still coming. The algorithms that might reshape daily life someday. What's easy to miss is that it already got here. It was there the last time you went grocery shopping. Almost certainly the time before that, too. It arrived without any announcement. It blended into hardware that was already on the walls and ceilings. And by the time most people started asking questions, it had already been running for years. But the most unexpected place this technology has shown up isn't on a ceiling. It's something you put your hands on every single time you walk into a store. The shopping cart. For nearly a century, the shopping cart had one job: A basket on wheels. You pushed it through the store, filled it up, emptied it at the register, and a teenager rolled it back to the entrance. Nobody gave it a second thought. It was just part of the background. That's changing, and most people have no idea it's happening. A growing number of retailers are rolling out carts equipped with technology that would have looked like a concept video just a few years ago. Digital screens mounted on the handle, barcode scanners built into the frame, weight sensors in the basket, the ability to total your entire purchase as you shop and pay directly from the cart before you ever reach a register. From a convenience standpoint, the appeal is real. Scan each item as it goes in. Watch the total update. When you're done, pay from the cart and walk out. No line, no terminal, no waiting. But convenience is only one of the things these carts were built to do. Every item you put in the cart, the system logs it. Every item you take back out, logged. Every product you carry for 2 aisles and then return to the shelf, that moment of reconsideration is recorded. How long you spent in each section of the store. Which display you slowed down near, whether the offer that appeared on the cart's screen changed what you did next. All of it becomes data. Here's the part that changes how you think about the whole picture. An item you picked up and put back didn't generate a sale, but it generated a signal, evidence of what caught your attention, what you considered, and what made you decide against it. Multiply that across hundreds of thousands of shoppers over months of trips, and that signal becomes genuinely valuable information about how real people make real purchasing decisions. This is why data has become one of the most valuable things a grocery retailer owns, sometimes more valuable in aggregate than the product sitting inside the cart itself. If any of this is landing differently than you expected, if you're seeing your weekly grocery run in a new light right now, a like actually helps this reach people who haven't heard any of this yet. That's the only reason I'm mentioning it. To understand why data matters so much, think about 2 shoppers. Both of them walk into the same store on the same Tuesday afternoon. Both buy similar things: milk, bread, a few basics. Both spend around $50. From the outside, the trips are identical. To the systems running in the background, they are completely different events. One used the loyalty app. The other paid cash. One triggered an AI alert when the bagging area weight didn't match the scan, and waited while the system sorted itself out. The other had no interruptions at all. One slowed down for about 11 seconds near a new product display before moving on. The other walked straight past without a pause. Every one of those differences generated data, not about those 2 individuals specifically, about patterns, what kinds of shoppers respond to certain promotions, where attention actually goes versus where the store assumes it goes. What behavior looks like in the seconds right before someone decides not to buy something. 30 years ago, a grocery store knew what sold and what didn't. It knew when shelves needed restocking. It had a rough sense of busy versus slow periods. The transaction happened, it created a record, and that was the full extent of the information exchange. Today, the transaction still happens, but woven around every moment of it, something else is being generated at the same time. A continuous, detailed, aggregated picture of how people actually behave inside stores, at a scale and resolution that has never existed in the history of retail. And that picture has commercial value that goes way beyond any single sale. If a retailer can predict with reasonable confidence what a large portion of its customers will want next week, it can stock the right amount of that product in the right spot at the right price with the right promotional framing, all before you've even thought about what you need. The margin advantage of that kind of precision is enormous. This behavioral data also does something else that's easy to overlook. It functions as an early economic signal. When millions of shoppers simultaneously start shifting toward cheaper brands, buying less meat, or hunting for deals more aggressively, that shift shows up in transaction data before it appears in any government economic report. Retailers can see where financial pressure is building across the country, often weeks before it becomes official. Loyalty programs are how all of it gets linked together. The question at checkout, do you have the app? Do you have a rewards card? Can I grab your phone number? Sounds like routine small talk. What it's actually doing is connecting your individual purchase history to everything else the store has collected, building a running record of your preferences, habits, and responses over months and years. Most people have a vague sense that something like this is happening. Most haven't fully thought through how much is actually being assembled from those small, ordinary moments. So take a step back and look at the full picture. Price increases, shrinkflation, fewer choices on the shelves, self-checkout replacing cashiers, toothpaste behind glass, AI running quietly across every transaction, shopping carts logging movement and decisions, loyalty programs building behavioral profiles over years. Each one arrived with its own explanation. Supply chain pressure drove prices up. Labor costs drove self-checkout. Theft drove locked cases. Competitive pressure drove AI investment. Consumer convenience drove the smart cart rollout. Every explanation is real. Every one reflects genuine business logic. But here's what becomes visible when you look at all of them at once. These are not separate responses to separate problems. They are all expressions of the same underlying shift, a fundamental change in what a grocery store is trying to be and what it's trying to take from every visit. For most of the last century, the central question in grocery retail was some version of this. How do we serve customers well enough that they keep choosing us? The competitive advantage was the experience, the selection, the relationship with the community around the store. Service was the product. The question driving these stores today sounds similar on the surface, but it isn't. Today the question is, how do we optimize the operation? How do we cut shrink, reduce labor costs, predict demand before it exists, and extract maximum value from every transaction and every square foot of floor space? When that question changes, everything inside the store eventually reflects the new answer. Self-checkout is an optimization of labor costs. Locked cases are an optimization of inventory loss. AI is an optimization of shrink prevention and shelf management. Smart carts are an optimization of checkout flow and data extraction. Loyalty programs are an optimization of behavioral prediction. None of this was designed to make your experience worse. Most of it arrived with real operational logic behind it. But when all of it lands at once, in the same store, on the same visit, week after week, the cumulative result is something very specific. The store starts to feel like it was built less for the person walking through it and more for the systems running underneath it. And this is only going to accelerate. The technologies that feel fairly new right now, AI-assisted loss prevention, behavioral data platforms, smart cart systems, will be standard infrastructure within a few years. What feels like a transition today will settle into just how grocery retail works. The pace is not slowing down. It is compounding, which raises a question worth sitting with, not about technology, not about margins, but about what a grocery store actually is as a place, not as a logistics operation or a data platform, but as somewhere that exists inside a community, somewhere people visit not just to buy food, but to briefly be part of something shared. There's a reason millions of people walk out of grocery stores today with a feeling they can't quite name. It's not the price on the receipt, though that's real. It's not the machine at checkout, though that's part of it. It's not the locked case, or the camera, or the screen on the cart. It's the accumulation. A camera gets installed. Reasonable. A checkout lane closes and becomes a terminal. Reasonable. A product moves behind glass. Reasonable. A loyalty program launches. Reasonable. A cart gets a screen. Reasonable. None of these alone cross a line. Together, they crossed it without anyone noticing exactly when. What changed is not the layout of the store. It's what the store has become, and what it's now doing on every single visit. For most of retail history, a store took one thing from a customer visit: revenue. A transaction happened, a margin was kept, and everyone went home. That was the complete model. Today, a store takes revenue and behavioral data, preference signals, traffic patterns, loyalty information, contributions to predictive models that carry monetary value entirely separate from any individual purchase. The grocery store has quietly become two businesses operating inside the same building. One sells food, the other collects and refines information about the people who come to buy it. Most shoppers have no idea the second business exists. They walk in thinking about dinner, they walk out thinking about what they spent, and in between, something else happened around them entirely. Something they didn't see, in a language most people don't speak. That's the thing millions of people are feeling but struggling to put words to. Not any single change. The quiet sense that the store is doing something beyond just serving them. Something running in the background, in every aisle, at every transaction, at a scale that has no real precedent in the history of buying groceries. There was no announcement, no visible moment when things shifted, just accumulation. One modest, reasonable change at a time. Until one day you walk in for orange juice and a loaf of bread, and something feels different that you can't point to. You're not imagining it. Something genuinely changed. And the most important thing to understand isn't any specific technology or business decision. It's this. When the core question a store is trying to answer changes, everything it does eventually reflects that new question. For 100 years, the question was how to serve people. That question hasn't disappeared. But beside it, another question is now being asked. At every moment, in every aisle, on every visit. A question most shoppers never hear. Because it's not being asked of them. It's being asked about them. And the answers are being collected. If this made you think differently about your weekly grocery run, even just a little, what's the one change you've actually noticed yourself? Drop it below. I read every one.